Glucose, sugar consumption, and the onset of type 2 diabetes, population trends in type 2 diabetes, and why we all need to pay attention to our glucose, sugar consumption daily. The effect of sugar intake on age of type 2 diabetes onset. This is a hypothetical graph showing the amount of daily sugar consumption on the x-axis grams and the age of type 2 diabetes onset in years. This graph shows that as the daily sugar intake grams increases from 0 grams per day to a hypothetical 30,000 grams per day, the age of type 2 diabetes onset decreases from age of onset of 80 years old to 40 to 10 years old. Physiology of type 2 diabetes and sugar intake. Physiology of type 2 diabetes and sugar intake. Insulin resistance. Consuming excessive sugar causes continuous spikes in blood glucose levels, leading to insulin resistance, a condition where body cells become less responsive to insulin. Beta cell dysfunction. Over time, the pancreas compensates by producing more insulin, but eventually the beta cells, insulin-producing cells in the pancreas, become overworked and fail. Early onset diabetes, higher sugar intake accelerates these processes, leading to earlier onset of type 2 diabetes. The graphs show that people consuming only 30 grams per day might develop diabetes around age 80, whereas those consuming 30,000 grams per day may develop it as early as age 35. Insulin is a hormone that binds to cells and allows the cells to intake glucose inside of them. So if there is any insulin dysfunction, whether the cells of the body are not responsive to insulin, that means that the glucose will not be able to get inside of the cells and the glucose will not be able to be used properly for energy use and energy metabolism. And therefore, the glucose will be stuck either outside of the cells or not be used properly in the cells. And therefore, there's going to be glucose that's going to be within the bloodstreams, which will then build up either in the arteries or in multiple tissues, like around the skin, inside of the skin, around the eyes, and in various other parts of the body, such as inside of the muscles as well. And when that happens, what happens is you get lots and lots of inflammation in various of the tissues and cells of the body that causes damage to the various cells and tissues of the body, such as the muscles and various other parts of the body. And what you also get is you get fat or fat cells inside of the muscle tissue, which makes the muscle less healthy, and it causes the muscles to become inflamed and also causes the muscles to have, which is all a part of the process of the muscles also becoming insulin resistant themselves. And as you may already know, muscles are highly dependent on glucose for their function to do all of the energy processes that are required. So this is extremely important when we understand glucose and glucose energy metabolism and insulin and the ongoing process of the onset of type 2 diabetes and all of the other manifestations that can unfold afterwards. Key takeaways: reducing sugar intake can delay the onset of type 2 diabetes. Excessive sugar consumption lowers the age of diagnosis, making the disease more prevalent in younger individuals. Analyzing the relationship between sugar consumption and the onset age of type 2 diabetes in the United States reveals significant insights. Average age of type 2 diabetes diagnosis in the United States. In the late 1980s to early 1990s, the mean age at diagnosis was approximately 52 years. By 1999 to 2000, this average decreased to around 46 years. Recent studies indicate a mean diagnosis age of approximately 45 years. Average daily added sugar consumption in the United States. Adults consume about 17 teaspoons or approximately 68 grams of added sugars daily. Children and adolescents ages 2 to 19 also average 17 teaspoons daily with variations across age groups. Ages 2 to 5, 7 to 13 teaspoons. Ages 6 to 11, 12 to 19 teaspoons. Ages 12 to 19, 14 to 20 teaspoons. Relationship between sugar consumption and age of diabetes onset. While direct causation between sugar intake and earlier diabetes onset is complex, excessive sugar consumption contributes to obesity and insulin resistance. Key risk factors for type 2 diabetes, the observed decrease in the average age of diagnosis may be influenced by increased sugar consumption over time. Visual representations. To illustrate the potential impact of sugar consumption on the age of type 2 diabetes onset, consider the following hypothetical scenario. Assumptions. Baseline daily sugar intake 30 grams. Incremental increases up to 300 grams. Corresponding decrease in age of diabetes onset from 60 to 30 years. Note, these figures are illustrative and do not represent actual data. Based on these assumptions, we can create line and bar graphs to depict the relationship between increasing sugar intake and decreasing age of diabetes onset. While excessive sugar consumption is linked to obesity and insulin resistance, leading risk factors for type 2 diabetes, individual risk varies based on genetics, lifestyle, and overall diet. Moderating sugar intake is a proactive step toward reducing the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. This is a graph demonstrating the effect of sugar intake on age of type 2 diabetes onset. The x-axis goes from 0 to 300 and the y-axis goes from 30 to 60. And as you can see, as the daily sugar intake increases from 0 grams per day to 300 grams per day, the age of onset of type 2 diabetes decreases from 60 years old to about 30 years old, which is extremely shocking. This is a bar graph demonstrating the age of type 2 diabetes onset versus sugar intake. The x-axis shows daily sugar intake in grams of glucose from 0 grams per day to 300 grams per day, and the y-axis shows age of type 2 diabetes onset from 0 grams per day to 60 grams per day. As you can see, as the intake of glucose increases from 0 grams per day to 300 grams per day, the age of type 2 diabetes onset decreases from about 60 grams per day in the bar graph to about around 30 from age 60 to about to the age of onset of age 30 at 300 grams per day of glucose intake. Here are the graphs depicting the relationship between increasing sugar intake and the decreasing age of type 2 diabetes onset. Number 1, line graph. As daily sugar intake increases from 30 grams per day to 300 grams, the age of type 2 diabetes onset decreases from 60 years to 30 years. This shows a negative correlation. Higher sugar consumption leads to earlier onset. Number 2, bar graph, clearly illustrates the decreasing trend of diabetes age onset as sugar intake increases. The visual drop in age as sugar intake increases emphasizes the potential risk of excessive sugar consumption. Number 2, bar graph, clearly illustrates the decreasing trend of diabetes onset age as sugar intake increases, as sugar intake rises. The visual drop in age as sugar intake increases emphasizes the potential risk of excessive sugar consumption. Key takeaways. Higher sugar intake contributes to earlier insulin resistance and beta cell dysfunction, leading to earlier type 2 diabetes onset. This is very, very important. Higher sugar intake contributes to earlier insulin resistance and beta cell dysfunction, leading to earlier type 2 diabetes onset. Reducing sugar consumption could potentially delay the onset of type 2 diabetes. So, dear friends, please share this with your friends, family members, and your loved ones and the people you care about, so that we can all work together to reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes and diabetes in general, whether it's type 2 diabetes or other types of diabetes, are all linked to heart disease. So if we reduce the amount of diabetes in the world, we can also significantly reduce the amount of heart disease in the world, and also we can ensure that everybody has a healthy heart, gets a healthy heart, and healthy heart function, proper heart function for the rest of their lives, and that they live healthy, amazing, long, strong lives and are blessed with health, prosperity, and longevity. Thank you so much.